Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to Audiobook Dynasty. If you want early access and even more parts for free, make sure to join me on Patreon. It was all as unexpectedly coincidental as a high school girl dashing out the door late for school, toast dangling from her mouth only to collide head-on with a certain infamous truck bound to send her straight to another world. Though in this case, Bokue Keikain hadn't sent anyone ice guy. Still, the blonde girl's attire made him wonder if he had stumbled into a different world altogether. Unlike those eye-catching, high-slit, body-hugging nun outfits seen in modern anime, this was an extremely traditional, loose-fitting habit. Overly modest, without a hint of figure. Honestly, in Bokue's opinion, she was overdressed for such warm weather. Was there still someone this dedicated to cosplay? No focus, man. Realizing his thoughts were drifting, Bokue snapped back to attention. He crouched beside the fallen blonde and offered his hand. Hey, are you okay? I am fine. I'm sorry. The response was unexpected. Despite her dazzling golden hair clearly that of a Westerner, she spoke in near-perfect Japanese, her soft voice tinged with anxious politeness. Only then did Bokue notice, the blonde nun was really just a teen, maybe 16 or 17. She had lovely emerald eyes that tipped downward at the corners, giving her a timid, delicate air. Let me help you up. She instinctively took his offered hand, and a gentle tug lifted her upright. Bokue then picked up the white headscarf from the pavement and handed it over. Here. Thank you. With a polite bow, the young nun accepted it. Some dust clung to the cloth from its fall, but she simply patted it off and replaced it on her head. Offering a warm smile, she inclined her head again. Sorry for bumping into you. I'm Asia Argento, the new sister at a nearby church. You can just call me Asia. It's nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I'm Bokue Keikain. He studied this so-called nun more closely, surprised that she wasn't a cosplayer after all, but an actual nun. Although that name. 2 minutes later, they walked side by side along the sidewalk, chatting as they went. Asia, are you from overseas? Yes, I grew up in Northern Europe. I only arrived in Japan this morning, and I'm heading to the church to report in. Northern Europe, hi. Bokue's reaction was non-committal. Her name, hair color, and eyes told the whole story anyway. Still, traveling halfway around the globe to be a nun in Japan? Why so hardcore? He was mulling it over when the silence grew a bit awkward, prompting Asia to ask. Have you been to Northern Europe before, Bokue-san? Huh? Oh, nope. He shook his head. I was just curious why you came all this way. Buddhism's more common in Japan, there aren't that many people who practice Christianity here. Or was your home church too crowded, so they shipped you off to a far corner of the map? It's not that. She blushed, startled by talk of overcrowded job markets. Then her voice went quiet. Her gaze dropped to her feet as she shuffled along. There were lots of reasons. He could guess. Bokue might speak bluntly at times, but he did have a certain emotional acuity. A teenage nun from Northern Europe traveling all the way to Japan, plus the way she hesitated when asked about it, there had to be a complicated backstory. But if she didn't want to elaborate, he wasn't going to pry. Everyone has their secrets, and that's normal. So, Bokue-san, judging by your uniform, are you on your way to school? Yeah. My school's straight ahead this way. He nodded toward an intersection down the road. In many Japanese suburbs, schools cluster conveniently near residential areas like that certain famous district with a continuous chain of elementary, junior high, and high school. Bokue then turned toward the north, pointing to a white church perched on a distant hillside, a few blocks away. I'm guessing that's your church. This area only has one, and if you keep left at the intersection, you'll hit it. Ah, I see it. Thank you so much, Bokue-san. He had merely pointed it out, but Asia beamed with a sincere, grateful smile. With a shrug, he said it was no big deal and added, all right, guess we'll split at the intersection. Before he could finish, a sudden thud echoed from behind them on the sidewalk, followed by a little boy's wailing. Bokue's head snapped around at the noise and in an instant, he sized up the scene. It was an elementary school kid in a QA uniform. Probably hopping on and off the short barrier between the pedestrian path and bike lane, he'd slipped and smacked the ground. Now he was crying his eyes out. Honestly, it wasn't anything serious, just a scraped knee, a bit of blood. The tears were mostly shock rather than genuine pain. Yet Asia froze. Spotting the situation, she rushed back to the fallen boy, crouching beside him to examine his injury. Then, reaching both hands from within her voluminous habit, she gently hovered her palms over the bleeding knee. A faint green glow radiated from her hands, accompanied by her soft whisper. It's okay. You'll be all right. Be strong. Like magic, the wound stopped bleeding, the flesh knitting back together under that pale light. Bokue stood there, watching with a raised eyebrow. Aside from the little incident on his way to school, the morning passed peacefully. By the time afternoon rolled around, it was once again time for club activities. Before leaving his classroom to head to the old schoolhouse, Bokue Keikain took a quick look at his phone. Yesterday, after wrapping up the matter with the special grade curse, he and Psycho Busujima had exchanged contact information on the assumption that if he really could destroy Sukuna's fingers, the Jujutsu Association would undoubtedly take notice once they heard about it. But since it was now afternoon and he still hadn't received any messages, it seemed the association's higher UPS were probably still arguing things out. Most likely, nothing unexpected would happen today. Sure enough, at the old schoolhouse. Just like yesterday, the familiar reception room found Rias, Akeno, and Konako already waiting there, enjoying some casual afternoon tea. Hearing footsteps from behind, Rias turned her head and caught sight of Bokue entering. A bright smile lit her lovely face. "Good afternoon, Bokue. Come sit." She tapped the empty spot beside her on the sofa, indicating he should sit next to her. But as soon as Rias spoke, Akeno seated on the opposite couch lifted her hand to her cheek and giggled softly. "Oh my, President! You really do like Bokue, don't you? Always wanting him right there by your side." Rias clearly hadn't expected such a direct comment from her best friend. Her cheeks instantly bloomed with pink. "See, cut it out, Akeno. I just meant the seat next to me was open, and it's easier if Bokue sits here. You've already got Konako on your side, so if Bokue also sat there, it'd look like a boss lecturing two employees or something." Is that so?" Akeno, still wearing that serene smile, turned her gaze toward the white-haired girl at her side. Konako. If Akeno-senpai usually gave off a warm big sister vibe, right now she was radiating a weird, silent pressure. In situations like this, there's a saying about wisely giving way to spare trouble. The petite girl needed less than a second to make her decision. She raised her hand. "In that case, I'll move over by President Rias. Bokue-senpai can sit here." Don't bother. Really, it's fine." Rias, watching Bokue get half-ushered, half-escorted toward the other side, almost stomped her foot in exasperation. She stood up from her seat, motioning with one hand for Konako to remain where she was, while her other hand grabbed Bokue's shirt sleeve as he came closer. "We'll just do it like this, okay? Akeno, if you want him so much, he can sit with you tomorrow." "Seriously?" Crackle. Like static sparking on a dry winter day, a tiny flash of white popped between Rias's fingertips and Bokue's sleeve. The red-haired girl let out a small cry, releasing his shirt at once. "Eek, what was that?" She stared at her hand in confusion, shaking it like she'd been scalded. Akeno shot to her feet, eyes widening in surprise. "That looked like holy power? Bokue, did you stop by the church today or something?" "Church? No, I didn't." He was just as puzzled. He'd never practiced any faith, certainly not gone to a church for prayers. But then he recalled something from that morning. "Oh, actually." Bokue made a small fist and tapped his palm, describing the moment he helped a blonde nun pick up her headscarf earlier. Akeno leaned in to examine the sleeve. "Indeed, there's a faint trace so weak you almost wouldn't notice, but it's definitely holy energy. For humans, it's harmless, you probably couldn't even feel it. But for us devils, it's highly unpleasant. Even being near a church is uncomfortable for a devil, so I'd guess you accidentally picked up a bit of holy power when you touched the nun's headscarf." "Oops, my bad." Understanding now, Bokue pressed his palms together in apology. He channeled golden spiritual power around himself, instantly purging every wisp of sacred aura. Meanwhile, with the situation clarified, Rias sat back down. Reflecting on what just happened, she rubbed her chin thoughtfully. "That is strange, though. Ordinarily, only higher-level clergy with real abilities get items infused with holy power. They usually serve important roles in the Vatican or major European churches, performing miracles and gathering faith, ranking above most local leadership. So why would someone like that be assigned here, to Japan?" "Good question," Bokue replied with a shrug. "I asked, but she didn't really want to talk about it." Then he noticed Rias was still rubbing her hand. "By the way, are you okay? Did it burn?" "I'm, not exactly fine." She nearly said "I'm okay" out of habit, but then she shifted tactics. Smiling sweetly, she lifted her hand to show slightly pink fingertips. "Look, it's a bit swollen. I hear humans sometimes use saliva on an injured area to help it heal. You wouldn't abandon me now, would you?" Her eyes glimmered with suggestive warmth, and she brought her hand so close to Bokue's lips he could feel the heat of her skin. This was heading down a reckless path fast, but across from them, Akeno gave a pointed little cough. "Ahem. President, aren't we forgetting why we asked Bokue to come? Didn't we promise to discuss official business once he was here?" "Ugh, Akeno, you." Flustered at having her rare opportunity thwarted, Rias shot her friend a mildly annoyed look. Then she cleared her throat and sat up straight. "Fine, we'll start with the main issue. Last night, we detected the presence of fallen angels near Kua Academy. We don't know exactly who they are or what they want, but keep your eyes open for the next few days. At the same time, in a hillside church northwest of Kua Academy, rays of afternoon sun shone through lofty stained glass windows, illuminating the towering European-style architecture. A long-haired woman stood on a raised platform, great, dark angel wings extended behind her, clad in minimal attire that highlighted her curvaceous figure. She was addressing the small group assembled below. You all understand the plan, right? Over the coming days, our mission is simple: wipe out every devil in this city. Leave nothing behind. Understood. X3. Hee, got it. Their voices overlapped in varying tones of confirmation. Satisfied, the dark-winged woman nodded. Then she leapt lightly from the platform, landing among them. She approached one figure, a shy, gold-haired nun, head bowed more than anyone else, and ran her tongue over her lips, eyes gleaming. You're on board, too, aren't you, Asia? Don't worry. God brought us exiles together here so we could face trials and earn our way back into his embrace. You do understand that, right? Yes, I understand. The term fallen angel is self-explanatory. They were once angels who lost their divine blessing, the white feathers of their wings stained black upon exile. Even though they've fallen from grace and lost their angelic standing, fallen angels aren't the same as devils. Nor can they return to being angels, so they remain a separate faction unto themselves. 1,000 years ago, there was a major war between heaven and the underworld. 3 forces took part. The angels, led by God. The devils, led by the previous Satans. The fallen angels, following their governor. They fought for dominion over the world, an all-out battle of no return. Yet this war, which everyone expected to drag on forever, ended abruptly in an almost laughable manner. The 2 heavenly dragons, the Red Dragon Emperor and the White Dragon Emperor, blundered into the battlefield and devoured the leaders of all 3 sides in a single gulp. Outraged, the 3 factions unleashed everything they had on the intruders, shredding them into thousands of pieces and even sealing away their souls. By the time they'd taken care of the rogue dragons, all 3 factions were left battered beyond recognition, both enemy and ally. Had they chosen to continue fighting, they might have wiped each other out completely. So the angels withdrew to heaven with their gravely injured god, the devils reeled from the death of their Satans, and the fallen angel faction also limped away, scattered to the winds. In the end, nobody won. All 3 sides lost. Among the losers, the devils were hit hardest. Their Satans died in action, and the pure-blood devils were nearly decimated, leaving only a few family branches. For instance, Rias's clan, the Gremory household, is one of the few surviving pure-blood devil lines. So, what are the fallen angels plotting by popping up now? Bokue Keikain pondered this question on his way home from school. Earlier, Rias had warned him about potential fallen angel activity near Kua Academy. By rights, the devils took the heaviest casualties in that ancient war, but if you compare overall survivors, the fallen angels lost even more. Their numbers were always smaller, and many of them died in that great conflict, scattering whatever remained. Reorganizing what was left would have been tough. No clue. Not wanting to overthink it, Bokue shrugged. In his view, it didn't matter whether they were devils or fallen angels if they minded their own business and didn't stir up trouble in the human world, everything was fine. But if they did go out of their way to cause chaos, he'd deal with them the same way he did that stray wolf devil. If you won't get a proper visa from the demon district, then enjoy your next life. He muttered under his breath and shook his head. Anyway, better get home. Kurika's bound to fuss if I'm too laha. Just then, he sensed a faint ripple of spiritual power in the air, like a pebble dropping into still water. It reminded him of what he'd sensed back when Sukuna expanded his domain with Busujima-senpai nearby, but far weaker and not evil in the least. If anything, it felt immature, familiar, even. A barrier technique? Coming from a line of Onmyōji, Bokue knew the feel of exorcism barriers. This was a simple repulsion barrier used to keep people away. But why here, in a quiet residential neighborhood? Usually, a repulsion barrier is placed around a large building when a spellcaster suspects something unclean inside but can't pinpoint its location. That way, random civilians won't wander in while the sorcerer hunts down the threat. It's the magical equivalent of police tape. But this area is all single-family homes. No big apartments or multi-level mansions. Searching wouldn't be that hard, plus, he wasn't picking up any sign of curses or evil auras here. Curious, Bokue altered his route home and slipped through an alley that led to the source of the barrier's power, then stopped at the sight of a familiar figure. It was none other than Asia, the blonde nun he'd bumped into that morning. She still radiated that same gentle, kind presence, quietly humming as she worked on what appeared to be the finishing touches of a repulsion barrier around a house. Asia. Bokue didn't bother hiding himself, he walked right up and called her name. She jerked upright like a startled rabbit, the headscarf on her blonde hair nearly bouncing off in the process. But the moment she recognized him, her alarm melted into joy. Oh, Bokue-san. You're on your way home from school? What a coincidence, She paused, eyes widening. A flicker of embarrassment replaced her smile. Actually, I'm setting up a repulsion barrier, so if you're here, that means I messed up. No, your technique's fine. It just doesn't work on me for certain reasons. He tried to comfort her as he stepped closer to the house. Anyway, Asia, what are you doing? Oh, it's, my job. Her timid face brightened at that word. Thanks to your help this morning, I made it to the local church. The priest in charge is inside exorcising something, and since I couldn't really help with that, he let me handle the repulsion barrier. Exorcising? Boke frowned. He hadn't sensed any evil presence in this neighborhood. Was there really something to expel? It was hard to believe they had a better sense for these things than he did, the acting heir of the Keikain line. A hint of unease stirred in him. Circling around Asia, he pressed down on the front door's handle and pushed it open. A stench of blood wafted out, thick and pungent. The evening sun streamed through the open doorway, casting a shaft of light into the dim living room. No overhead lights were on, and only a single candle burned on the dining table in the center. A thick, dark red liquid slowly oozed across the floor, saturating the wooden boards with its pungent, metallic smell. The stench of blood and something like organs assaulted the senses of anyone standing at the threshold. A young, silver-haired man in a priest's outfit sat by the table, head bowed, legs crossed. The candle's small flame flickered at the sudden draft from the open door, momentarily illuminating half his face. He seemed lost in his own thoughts. Lying by his chair was a corpse or what was left of it. No, calling it a corpse would be too generous. It was more like human remains. The body's torso had been split open, ribs jutting out, leaving nothing of its original human shape, more like a rack of pork ribs one might see at a market stand. At the sight, Asia's expression froze in horror. Her earlier happiness at encountering a familiar face vanished, replaced by unbridled terror and revulsion. Father, what is this? Hi. As though finally aware someone had come in, the silver-haired priest glanced over, tilting his chin with a dismissive sneer. Hey, Asia, I told you to set up a repulsion barrier. Who's this guy? He didn't so much as explain the scene, his tone oozed thinly veiled menace. He's timid by nature. Asia shrank at his aggressive questioning. Immediately, Bokue Keikain stepped inside, placing himself between her and the priest. I'm Bokue Keikain, acting representative of the Kyoto-based Keikain clan. Oh. Keikain, hi? Feels like I've heard that name somewhere. Let me think. Leaning on the table, the silver-haired priest fiddled with a large handgun, pointing the muzzle at his own temple as though scratching an itch. Then he clicked his tongue, put the gun down, and smirked in feigned revelation. Ah, right, some Onmyōji family from Japan. I heard you folks had an understanding with yokai about 4 centuries ago. 4 humans, you sure are untrustworthy, hi. He drew out the final words in a mocking drawl, sticking out his tongue in a way that strongly suggested he wasn't entirely sane. And who are you supposed to be? Bokue took another step forward, voice still calm, but the golden spiritual energy flickering around him foretold what he planned to do next. From the doorway, Asia felt her heart lurch. If her own healing aura was like a gentle spring breeze at a lakeside, then Bokue's power now felt like molten magma rising from the earth's core, steady and intense. Hell, looks like an acting head does have some bite. Feeling that surge, the silver-haired priest scoffed. Any pretense of indifference vanished as he vaulted backward from the table in a neat flip, landing a couple of meters away. He still held the gun in one hand, now in the other. He whipped out a sword hilt. Yes, a hilt. No blade, just a guard and grip. Wind and shrouded sword. Bokue wondered, raising an eyebrow. Almost immediately, the priest's grip on the hilt caused a brilliant white radiance to emerge. The glow lengthened from the guard, forming a blade of pure light. It looked uncannily like something a space opera knight might wield. Allow me to give you a proper introduction. With a theatrical flourish and a voice like a man unhinged, the priest brandished his radiant blade. Bowing extravagantly yet sloppily, he let his tongue loll in a vicious grin. I am Fried Selzen, top exorcist from the Vatican's Holy Office. Oh, sorry, former top exorcist, that is. The difference between active and former was huge. Exorcists under the Vatican were akin to Onmyōji in Japan, individuals granted special powers to protect humanity from otherworldly threats. Typically, an exorcist either served until too old or injured to fight, or else died in battle against monsters. A young exorcist leaving the order? If it wasn't that he failed the training phase, it meant he was deemed psychologically unfit, someone severely unstable. Sort of like a certain rampaging pilot who got booted out and took up grand theft instead. Fried clearly fell into that category. And from the fact he still possessed church-issued gear, it was safe to assume he'd gone rogue. But just then, Asia found the courage to speak again, though her voice trembled when she glanced at the gruesome remains. She steadied herself and raised her voice. Even if you're a former exorcist, if you still believe in God, shouldn't you be protecting humans, not murdering them? Shut it, you worthless piece of trash nun! He cut her off with a hysterical snarl, swinging his light sword in a wide arc. His face twisted with rage. Those fallen angel gals told me not to mess with you, but let's be honest, you're useless, you dumb dog nun. You couldn't even set up a simple repulsion barrier without screwing it up. No wonder the church kicked you out like the garbage you are. Meanwhile, I was in here exorcising, you get me? All devils and any humans tainted by devils need to be slaughtered. Ah! It was as though Fried had just torn open an old wound. Asia clutched her shoulders and stepped back half a pace, trembling. Tainted by devils. Bokue's eyes landed on a small pen-drawn sigil near the candle on the table. He recognized the simple magic circle, basically a novelty summoning array for a weak, low-class devil. For an ordinary human with barely any magical power, it was little more than a silly parlor game. Yet Fried had stormed in and butchered the occupant of this house for it. Absolutely insane. Exhaling softly, Bokue lifted his gaze again to meet the ex-priest's deranged stare. The golden aura around Bokue flared even brighter. By rights, I ought to arrest you as a criminal with special abilities, hand you over to the anti-demonic task force to rot in a barrier cell. But frankly, that's unnecessary, isn't it? There was no protracted battle, just a single, understated moment. A few seconds later, the silver-haired exorcist's head went flying. Bokue Keikain casually tossed it aside. Fried Selzen. He became an exorcist at age 13 by passing a combat exam. After joining the Vatican's order, he demonstrated extraordinary talent in quick succession, slaying devils and beasts that even veteran exorcists struggled to handle. By 17, he had climbed into the Holy Office, becoming the youngest ace in the order's history. His record was dazzling, indisputably proving him a genius in combat. But Fried harbored a fatal flaw: he lacked true faith, instead craving bloodshed and battle. On missions, if a comrade suffered an injury that risked compromising the objective, he'd kill them without remorse and carry on solo. Then, upon returning to the order, he'd claim those teammates had died fighting the high-level devils, absolving himself of any blame. Of course, the truth eventually leaked. As Fried miraculously returned alone from too many missions, suspicion grew. A thorough investigation uncovered his atrocities. But with his skills, Fried eluded arrest, fleeing the Vatican altogether, ending up in Japan as a lost priest. Now, under the dim, flickering candlelight that once again illuminated Fried's face, his final expression remained frozen in terror, mouth gaping in a silent scream. Phew, done. Placing Fried's disembodied head, along with the stolen light sword and handgun, on the dining table, Bokue exhaled. Japan's police might not be the most efficient, but at least this evidence should help them realize the killer was linked to the Vatican's order, leading the authorities to contact the church, confirm Fried's identity, and handle it from there. As for the house's unfortunate owner, tragic, but the dead cannot return. Bokue silently offered a brief prayer for their soul. Having settled every detail to ensure no loose ends, he finally turned toward the door. Outside, darkness had swallowed the last hint of sunset, night had firmly taken hold. At the threshold stood Asia, silent and unmoving. The broad hood of her nun's habit veiled her face so that Bokue couldn't see her expression clearly. Pulling out his phone, he sent a text to the cat-eared girl at home letting her know he'd be late tonight, then looked up and shrugged. Let's talk somewhere else, Asia. She didn't say a word. Her lips quivered, as if to speak some apology. But before the words could form, Asia whirled around, vigorously wiping her tears with her sleeve. Then she bolted, disappearing into the deepening twilight. For a moment, Bokue stood there, frozen like some actor caught mid-scene, hand half raised. He only wanted to move the conversation elsewhere, right? She'd just witnessed an incredibly gruesome murder scene and watched him kill a bloodthirsty ex-priest on the spot. Was he supposed to pat her on the shoulder and say, "Let's go get barbecue"? That would have been bizarre. Naturally, they needed a quieter place to talk everything through. But now she'd run off clearly shaken. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. Still, better to keep an eye on her so nothing else happened. With her stamina, she couldn't get far before tiring out. He'd let her calm down in private, then approach once she was ready. Just as he made to follow, there was a faint whir overhead. A single black feather drifted down, catching his eye. Then a sultry female voice echoed from above. "Oh my, where do you think you're running off to, little nun?" Huh? Asia's body visibly stiffened. She halted in her tracks. Bokue glanced skyward. A shapely silhouette swooped down like a hawk, cutting through the night's gloom to land at Asia's side, one slender arm blocking the nun's path. She was a young woman with a bewitching figure, long black hair cascading like a waterfall, and an outfit so revealing it practically spelled out risque. If one overlooked the dark wings unfurled behind her, it might have been quite the alluring encounter. A fallen angel. Bokue understood immediately. Both Rias and Fried had mentioned fallen angels, and this figure's appearance left no doubt. Sama. As if terrified, Asia cowered like a trembling chick, not daring to resist. She was rooted in place. Rainare smiled faintly. "So Fried got taken out, huh? No matter, we'll protect you anyway." Be a good girl and return to the church with us, Asia. There's an important ritual to conduct. She turned her gaze to Bokue, casting him a disdainful glance before seizing Asia's arm and beating her black wings, taking flight. A cool drop of moisture caught the night breeze, a teardrop. Bokue also caught a faint whisper of Asia's stifled sob. Help me! But he didn't pursue immediately. He stood, watching as the fallen angel glided off toward the church in plain view. Calmly, he took out his phone and dialed Rias. Rias? It's me. I found the fallen angels. Meanwhile, in Kua Academy's old schoolhouse, Rias dozing on the clubroom couch startled upright at the news. Hi, you found them? Where? They're at the church near the academy. I'm heading there now. Over the line, Bokue's voice was peppered with the rush of wind. It sounded like he was running. Yet despite Rias having explicitly told him to track fallen angel movements, she now hesitated. Because, the church, a consecrated stronghold, was absolutely off-limits to devils. Holy wards meant weaker devils could be injured just by entering the grounds. A pure-blood devil like Rias might be able to force her way in, but that would be viewed as a unilateral aggression by the underworld against heaven. In their delicate post-war recovery, such provocation was unthinkable. Damn fallen angels, using the fact they could enter holy ground freely. Don't worry, leave the barrier to me. He reassured her, then cut the line. The next moment, golden spiritual power burst around him. Bokue streaked into the sky like a firework, rocketing across the night toward the church. Even from a distance, he snapped his fingers. A radiant bolt of pressure slammed down, shattering the holy barrier that cloaked the church in an instant. Oh, you're not getting away. What's happening? What's going on? The barrier's been destroyed. It was like dropping a deep water bomb into a mirror-smooth lake the moment the holy barrier shattered, its magical backlash threw the entire church into chaos. On the platform at the front of the sanctuary, a blonde, twin-tailed loli nearly lost her footing as the sudden tremor made her stumble. She had to flare her black wings midair to avoid smashing her face against the steps. From behind the Roman columns flanking each side of the platform, two figures stepped out simultaneously, blocking the aisle that led straight to the church's main doors. Both took up defensive stances, clearly on high alert. In front was a tall, coat-wearing man with a bowler hat evoking some odd cross of a steampunk cleric, though his dark, feathery wings left no doubt about his identity as a fallen angel. This is crazy. We're on holy ground, protected by God's blessing. Is the Gremory girl looking to spark another war? Who knows? And it might not even be her. Besides, what reason would they have for starting a fight with us? Behind him, another fallen angel, a blue-haired, busty woman, looked just as rattled. It was obvious these fallen angels had come to seize territory. But, they'd hardly done anything yet. They even had a meticulous long-term plan. First, let that maniac freed the ex-priest eliminate any normal humans who'd been seduced into devil worship by the Gremory family. Next, they'd spread the fallen angels' doctrine and draw power from the new converts' faith. That was only step one, started today. And now, mere hours in, was Gremory already sending an army to attack them? This was like trying to set up a chessboard in the park, only to have scalding tea thrown in your face before you even placed a single piece. Kalawarna silently cursed in her mind. Just then, the big fallen angel man Donazik abruptly spun around, looking up at the twin-tailed loli who was still hovering in midair. Middled. Where's Rainare? I think Rainare headed out to check Freed's progress. Still clueless, the small blonde fallen angel, Middled, tapped a finger to her lips thoughtfully. After all, we all know Freed's mental state. Once he starts working, it's like he loses himself entirely. And he also took that saint girl with him. If we're not careful, she might run off, which would be so not fun. She didn't finish. An instant later, an urgent voice familiar to them rang out from above the church. It quaked with fear. Kalawarna. Donazik. Stop that boy. Middled, come with me, we have to begin the ritual immediately. Hi. Middled blinked, looking up, and the next second, a loud crash broke open part of the church roof. A black-haired fallen angel woman in a revealing outfit covering only the essentials came plunging through, practically crash-landing. She was clutching Asia beneath one arm, skidding and flapping her wings to break. Rainare, are you okay? Middled panicked at the sight of her seemingly invincible big sister returning in such a bedraggled state. She had always believed Rainare's combat power to be first-rate among them. Even without God's blessing, Rainare could conjure light spears lethal enough to grievously wound mid-level devils and easily slaughter lower-tier ones. In their group, Rainare was definitely the top fighter, right behind any actual fallen angel officers. Yet she'd come back, battered and breathless, something Middled could scarcely imagine. I'm fine, Rainare spat, gasping for air, wiping her face with the back of her hand. She gestured at Kalawarna and Donazik behind her. But that guy is in pursuit. I only just managed to get back. You two go outside and stall him. Don't risk your lives, Just hold him off until I finish the ritual. Then we can all gang up and destroy him. Just thinking about the boy she'd met outside that house made Rainiere break into a cold sweat. It was terrifying. At first, she'd figured that as a fallen angel, she could easily scoop Asia up and flee into the sky, where some powerless human with no special wings or flight gear could never catch her. Yet the next thing she knew, the boy had attacked from long range, shattering the holy barrier around the church in an instant. Fortunately, her airborne path had been too unstable from the wind currents overhead, so she narrowly dodged what might have been a crippling hit. Since when were humans capable of that? It felt impossible, but the evidence was right in front of her eyes. There was no denying it. All she could do now was start the ritual at once, forcibly transplant Asia's sacred gear into herself. If Asia died in the process, well, so much the better. They'd lose one saint, but Rainiere would gain the power to heal anything. She would become the new saint of the fallen angel faith. Understood. Got it. The two fallen angels answered in near unison. Dark purple energy flared around them. With their crow-black wings unfurled, they prepared to rise into the air. However, you won't need to look for me. I'm right here. A calm, youthful voice sounded out of nowhere within the church, freezing the pair in place. Both menacing powers ready to launch, now forcibly halted. An immense, invisible pressure flooded the space, locking every occupant in fearful stillness. Rainiere felt cold sweat running down her forehead. She knew full well whose aura this was. He was inside the church. Among them. Behind her. Asia tucked under the fallen angel's arm like a small, trembling piglet lifted her tear-stained face. Her voice came as little more than a whisper. Bokue-san. Standing in the middle of four fallen angels, Bokue Keikain remained perfectly poised. The bright golden aura from before was gone now, as if a sword's edge had been sheathed. Pale moonlight filtered through the damaged ceiling, lending a silver sheen to his shoulders as he lowered his head slightly. You told me to save you, Asia. So here I am. Four devils blessed with abundant magical power, traveling from point A to point B has never been difficult. By the time Rias received Bokue's call, gathered Akeno and Konako, and then teleported to a point just outside the church's defensive perimeter, barely 3 minutes had passed. Under the darkening sky, streetlights flickered to life, and distant sirens wailed. The trio of high school girls appeared at a small, unlit intersection. Just ahead lay the once holy ground belonging to the church. One more step, and they'd enter territory where devils were strictly forbidden, like crossing a heavily guarded border. But now it was possible. Is the barrier destroyed? Rias still felt uneasy. She tentatively reached out with her senses. Akeno gave a slight nod. It must be something Bokue did. If what I'm sensing is right, we can pass now. Akeno, born into a shrine maiden family, was familiar with barrier techniques, though not as specialized as the Keikain clan. Typically, a barrier acts like a radar. The moment it detects a hostile signature, like a devil, it triggers an alarm. And for a pure-blood devil such as Rias, one of the few remaining noble lines from the underworld, if that radar had been intact, stepping onto church ground would mean a formal declaration of war upon heaven. In the fragile post-war era, that was unthinkable. But with the holy barrier smashed, it was as if that radar had been broken. It changed everything. No more hesitation. Rias raised her arm decisively. Akeno, Konako, we're going in. Yes, the two answered in unison. It only took a brief moment for them to arrive at the church. In a flash of blinding white lightning, accompanied by a deafening boom, the church doors were violently blown open. As the dust cleared, the three girls stepped inside. Meanwhile, Bokue Keikain was surrounded by four fallen angels in the church's central aisle. Hearing the noise at his back, he glanced over his shoulder. Bokue, are you all right? Seeing him hemmed in, Akeno called out in alarm before Rias could say a word. He simply waved it off. I'm fine, really. I half expected a bunch of rats that I couldn't handle on my own, but it turns out there were only 4. If I'd known, I wouldn't have asked you to come all this way. Rats. It was a blatant insult, but for the fallen angels, they had no choice but to endure it. They hadn't come here to openly battle House Gremory. If they'd had the power to crush the devils easily, they wouldn't have bothered with gathering faith and building up strength in secret. Nevertheless, they did have a simpler approach at the ready. Daughter of the Gremory family, what are you doing? After exchanging a quick look with his companions, the older, coat-wearing fallen angel DxD stepped forward. You realize this is church property. You devils intruding, breaking the barrier means declaring war on heaven. Do you want another war? If so, we fallen angels won't stand aside. Right away, he tried to pin blame. But a cool voice from behind him cut in. It's not we. It's me. What? Aren't you with the Gremory? Wait, you're not a devil. Stunned, DxD re-examined Bokue's aura. Only then did he realize this wasn't a devil at all. A human. Bokue Keikain, acting representative of the Kyoto-based Onmyōji clan. Turning slightly, Bokue cast an impassive glance their way. His words were slow but firm. I'm the one who broke the church's barrier. I'm also the one who asked Rias to come. If the church or the heaven side has a problem, let them deal with me. He clenched his fist. I'll show them that in this world, having the moral high ground is the most useless thing imaginable. Why you? Donazik was stunned at his sheer arrogance. This was Japan where Buddhism prevailed, where people commonly believed gods watch from above. Did this boy not fear the wrath of heaven? You destroyed the holy church's barrier, and you don't fear God's punishment. He's free to give it a try. Boke lowered his elbow and tightened his knuckles. No brilliant aura glowed at his surface, yet a golden radiance pulsed beneath his skin, gathering at his fist like unimaginable power. His expression was cold, his tone serious. They spread their faith and built this church yet shelter these monsters. They let someone who'd forsaken his faith slaughter innocent civilians. If that's your so-called God, then I'll drag down this false god myself. If God won't save people I will. No wrathful scowl like a Vajra, no gentle bow like a bodhisattva. His words rang like a thunderclap echoing throughout the church. At last, the fallen angels dropped all pretense. No more attempts at negotiation. Since fearmongering wouldn't work, that left open conflict. Donazik and Kalawarna simultaneously beat their wings to ascend, forming blackish spears of condensed energy in their hands. At the same time, Rainare, still gripping Asia under her arm, sprinted for the side corridor. Middle had already opened a passage to the underground vault. They would follow the plan. Those two would hold off the intruders while Rainare performed the ritual, stealing Asia's power. Then she would return to help finish the fight. Be careful. Watch out, Boke. From the doorway, Rias and Akeno called out in alarm. Power of destruction and pale white lightning surged upward, swirling in tandem. But faster than either was Konako. The petite white-haired girl moved like a cat pouncing. The instant the fallen angels shifted, she crouched low. One foot stomped so hard it left a cratered, spiderweb fissure in the floor. Then she blasted forward like a cannon shell, leaping straight into the fray. Her target was the pair of airborne fallen angels summoning energy spears. Yet mid-charge, Konako's golden eyes widened slightly. Behind her, Akeno electric arcs dancing around her figure also froze in surprise. But unlike Konako, Akeno's gaze held a hint of nostalgia, like reuniting with an old friend. For good reason. The boy who'd been in the center of the circle was now above the two fallen angels, moving even faster than she could. Bokue Keikain, both fists clenched, body rotating, a red draconic insignia glowing at his brow, all his might focused into his fists. I am a warrior. He launched a single punch like the blazing sun at noon. It made the sky quake and the earth tremble, leaving even gods cowering. He wanted them to realize. He right here, right now was invincible. God-slaying overlord fist. The moment Boke's fists slammed down, Akeno Himejima's thoughts were pulled back to that afternoon 10 years ago. Flames engulfed the shrine, the leaping red firelight reflecting off her mother's rapidly cooling body. The pristine white and red shrine maiden garb was stained with a deep crimson of death. The once tranquil forest around them rattled with the Himejima clan's exorcists, shouting and bellowing in pursuit. Catch her, don't let that abomination get away. I don't care about the others, but that half-breed must be taken alive. That's the clan head's order. She's the bastard child of that traitorous Shuri Himejima and some filthy fallen angel. If word spreads, the Himejima clan's reputation will be finished. Kill her! Kill her! Kill her! Someone, save me! Save! Mom! Echoes of hunting cries rose in the woods behind her, and somewhere off to the west, a small figure was sprinting for her life. The young girl's hair hung in wild disarray, and the once comfortable shrine maiden clothes became a cruel hindrance. Loose sleeves snagged on branches, the cloth ripped to tatters by thorns. Bits of red and white fabric littered the ground like a path of despair. But at that moment, she couldn't be bothered with how it looked. She only clung to the final words her mother had spoken, right before falling, in order to protect her. Akeno, run, find your father. Yet, where was her father now? He was a fallen angel officer off somewhere on a mission for the fallen angel governor. Which was why the Himejima clan had come. They killed her mother. Now they'd kill her, too. Their hunting calls drew closer, echoing in the darkening forest. The clan had sent its elite exorcists. Within minutes, the clues Akeno left behind were enough to track her down. She's here. She went this way. Follow the footprints and cloth scraps, she can't have gone far. We must kill her. Like a final countdown to death. The footsteps multiplied, pressing in with grim purpose. Akeno's strength was nearly spent. Father, where are you? Cough. Her parched throat burned with blood and dryness, cutting off her plea. She staggered to a halt, dropping to a crouch, hands on her knees, gasping for air. Everything tasted of iron. They're going to catch me. I can't run anymore. Mom. Dad. I'm going to die. She felt strangely numb, whether from shock or resignation. The terror of a blade through her chest no longer mattered. Akeno wiped away the blood at her lips and straightened, wanting to tilt her face to the patch of sky beyond the forest canopy, perhaps catching one last glimpse of afternoon sun. But instead of the clan's bloodthirsty exorcists, she saw someone else, a teenage boy, apparently traveling with a pack slung over his shoulder, regarding her with open curiosity. Hey, wake up! I'm not your dad. Also, are you okay like that? Run! She tried to shout, straining her voice to warn him. Her clan's exorcists wouldn't hesitate to kill witnesses. If she was doomed to die, at least this stranger could escape. But her throat was too raw to make a sound. And that was when the pursuers arrived. Finally ran out of steam, Gave us quite the chase. Oh well, she's just a kid, after all. Still, it's impressive she made it this far. Such a pity. She could have been a top exorcist if she hadn't inherited that filthy fallen angel blood. Blame your whore of a mother for betraying the Onmyōji clan by consorting with devils. It felt like the final, condemning words before an execution. The group's leader, brandishing a naginata, strode forward. Akeno shut her eyes in terror. But she heard a calm voice instead. Oh, these uniforms. So you're the Onmyōji clan's exorcists. Shouldn't you be working with those Jujutsu sorcerers to clean up curses? Why chase a little kid out here? Only then did the leader notice the teen boy standing next to the exhausted girl. Some random brat, are you? Well, I'm sorry, but if you've learned our clan's secret, I'm afraid you'll have to die with her. He looked a bit stunned, then muttered under his breath. You want to kill me? That's quite a statement. If you manage it, everyone in Hero Village would be grateful to you. Just the span of a quarter incense stick's time, a few minutes, and multiple thunderous impacts shook the mountain slopes as though meteorites had crashed. After that, calm returned to the forest that had rung with chaos all afternoon. The exorcist leader fell last. Broken shards of armor clattered around him like fish scales peeled by a blunt blade. A once famed holy naginata lay snapped into 3 pieces. Even so, battered and near death, he clung to a final threat. You can't kill me. If you do, the Onmyōji clan head will hunt you down. They'll never forgive you. Oh. Unscathed, the teen frowned, picking at his ear with a pinky, then blowing on it. Well, in that case. He dropped one last punch. A lethal blow. When he returned to the girl, the boy pulled a fancy water flask emblazoned with a single Hana character and a large bag of classic potato chips from his pack, offering them to her. Here. I'll give you these. Take the flask, go catch the bullet train to Kyoto. Find a fox lady with a very big bust at Yasaka Shrine. Show her this, and she'll help you. It's safe there. Oh, almost forgot to give you some money for the ride. I've got spare change. He pointed through the trees. Go north about 20 minutes, and you'll reach the main road. Then take the train 2 hours to Kyoto. If you're fast, you'll get to Yasaka Shrine by nightfall. Then he stood, shouldering his pack. I've got other business, so, guess this is goodbye. My name's Bokue Keikain, acting representative of the Kyoto-based Keikain clan. Right now, I'm traveling alone. The next day, major news headlines broke everywhere. The main Onmyōji estate flattened overnight. House leader Joe Onmyōji found dead, decapitated and displayed on the Grand Torii Gate. Moonlight shone on black feathers scattered like wilted flower petals. Within the church where the battle had already ended, Asia, her nun's veil fallen away, lay dazed in Bokue's arms. She was still in shock from everything that had happened. It wasn't until Bokue's voice came from above that she realized what was going on. Hey! Snap out of it! It's over, you're safe now. Like being pulled from a dream, Asia trembled as her eyes refocused. She took in her surroundings, then suddenly realized she was cradled in his arms. Almost instantly, her pale cheeks turned bright red, as if steam were hissing from the top of her head. I am sorry. And, thank you so much for saving me, Boku-san. She scrambled free from his arm, bowing repeatedly in apology and gratitude. Meanwhile, Rias and Akeno entered from behind, joining Konako at Bokue's back, curious about this golden-haired nun. Although heaven and the underworld had been mortal enemies in the ancient war, fighting until their armies were practically in shambles on an individual level, none of them here harbored such deep hatred that they'd attack on sight. More often than not, things only escalated like that with extremists, such as Freed. This girl, she's that nun from this morning you mentioned, Boku. Rias peered at Asia a little more carefully, then voiced her recognition. Yeah, that's her. Boku stooped to pick up the nun's veil from the ground. Turning to the 3 girls behind him, he lifted it to show them. Basically, I picked this up for her earlier, and that's how. And no, don't wave that around. Seeing Boku raising the sacred garment, the other 3 backed off in unison, smiling stiffly as they retreated a full step. They clearly wanted to avoid contact. A consecrated veil like that could seriously sting a low-class devil akin to being swatted by a supercharged mosquito zapper. Even Rias, a pure-blood devil, would find it uncomfortable touching something blessed with holy power, about as appealing as having your hair washed with a pungent broth you absolutely detest. In other words, from their perspective, Bokue waving the veil around was like someone gleefully waving around a, well, gross object. It was pretty jarring, to say the least. Sorry. Asia's voice, quiet and apologetic, broke the moment. She lowered her head, fingers laced over her chest. Earlier today, I lied to you, Boke-san. I'm not a nun anymore, I'm an outcast nun. Huh? Boke felt momentarily baffled. He'd heard of stray devils, lost priests, those who'd forsaken their orders and turned dangerous. But a nun was supposed to be non-combatant. How outcast could she possibly get? This wasn't exactly a grimdark Warhammer realm. Yes, Asia said softly, still gazing down. I was abandoned by my parents as a baby, then raised by the church. I possessed a power to heal both humans and angels, so they made me a holy maiden. But one day, I accidentally discovered my healing worked, on devils, too. She raised her hands, a soft green glow emanated from her palms, and a pair of matching rings flickered on her middle fingers. That's the sacred gear called Twilight Healing, right? Rias recognized the double ring relic, staring in amazement. Now it makes sense. A sacred gear isn't tied to a single faction. Angels, humans, devils, or even fallen angels can use one. So of course it would heal anyone. I know, but some things can't be explained so easily. A shadow of sorrow passed across Asia's usually gentle face. That's why I came all the way from Northern Europe to Japan, hoping I could quietly be a nun in a far-off place far from the church's eyes. Rainier told me everyone here had been abandoned by God, but if we passed his trials, we'd be welcomed back into his arms. You actually believed that nonsense? Boke shrugged. If their God was so attentive, that maniac priest wouldn't have butchered innocent people. He'd have cleared your name when they called you outcast. He wouldn't have let those fallen angels nearly steal your sacred gear. A false god like that? You're better off believing in me. Yes. I think so too. Asia nodded so vigorously her ponytail swished. She stepped closer, so close their chests practically touched, and gazed into his eyes with fierce determination. Wah! Now it was Boke's turn to blink in confusion. Wait, did she just say what he thought she said? But Asia kept going, her voice unwavering. When Rainier took me, I begged Boke-san for help and you really came. So from this day on, I'm giving up on being God's follower. I'll be Boke-san's personal believer. She still addressed him politely, but the honorifics had shifted, her entire tone had changed. She wasn't just showing gratitude, she was pledging devotion. Era. Akeno murmured her habitual phrase, covering her mouth with one hand. Rias, beside her, pressed her palm to her forehead in exasperation. Wow, devoting herself to a guy she only met this morning, someone she barely knows. That's pretty. Jealous, President? Akeno teased, tipping her head with a mischievous glint. Rias froze. Huh? No, of course not. What are you saying, Akeno? Ehehe, I'm joking. Akeno hid her grin behind her hand, though a hint of wistful emotion flickered in her gaze. Truth be told, she felt a twinge of envy, too. Don't worry. Konako's soft voice cut in, directing her stare forward. If Rias Buku or Akeno-senpai were ever in danger, Boke-senpai would help them exactly the same way. Huh? The two older girls paused their banter. A moment ago, they'd claimed it was all teasing, but now their gazes drifted, both flicked uncertainly toward the boy ahead. Sensing their looks, Boke turned his head to meet their eyes. Konako pressed on. Right, Boke-senpai. Yeah, of course. He gave it a second's thought, then added. That includes you, too, Konako. MMPH. Even if you say that, I'm not happy about it. Konako's cheeks colored faintly, but her cat-like ears twitched ever so slightly, betraying a shy spark of gratitude. They were still inside the church. Forming a small circle, Rias, Akeno, and Konako all wore unusually serious expressions. Rias spoke first. Right now, we have an important issue to settle: where Asia-san is going to stay tonight. It was a crucial point. Sure, the fallen angels and that stray priest had been dealt with, but the holy barrier around the church had also been destroyed. Leaving a defenseless healing nun here alone didn't seem remotely safe. Re-establishing a barrier was possible, of course, but living in a place like this, cold, abandoned, no supplies, was a different story. The barrier itself couldn't magically transform into a bed or blankets, after all. In fact, the only reason Rainier and Fried had taken over this old church was because it had long been deserted, though it still retained some faint holy protection. Any furnishings or provisions had been cleared out ages ago. Forcing Asia to stay here would mean she'd be sleeping on chilly marble floors, far too harsh for her. I think we should ask her opinion about that. Konako's quiet voice broke the tension. Right, good point, Rias said, nodding slowly. Then, turning to the blonde girl tilting her head curiously in their direction, she asked. Asia-san, you came from Northern Europe to be a nun, right? Do you have a place of your own in Japan, an apartment or house? Ho, house. Asia echoed, shaking her head quickly. I don't have anything like that. She was just a penniless saint. There was no way she could afford real estate. Even though she'd once held a high status in the church, high status didn't mean high income. You get to bask in the Lord's light, so why would you need worldly money? That was the church's logic. Even the church's knightly warriors often lived on a shoestring. No house, then, what about renting a place? And no. I don't have that either. That complicates things, Rias murmured. She was about to consider other options when Asia's careful voice floated over. Actually, I don't mind. As long as I can stay with Bokue-san, anywhere is fine. No way. That's absolutely not allowed. They blurted it out in unison, Rias and Akeno. Konako had just been about to speak but was beaten to the punch, so she silently closed her mouth again. Well, they'd basically said what she was going to say anyway. Asia flinched at their abrupt response, her large emerald eyes brimming with confusion. She only wanted to live with Bokue. Why such a strong reaction from the others? Meanwhile, Rias and Akeno, realizing someone else was thinking the same thing they had been, traded a quiet look. Rias narrowed her eyes at her best friend, while Akeno responded with a soft laugh, a momentary flicker of electricity seeming to snap between them. Sensing an impending stalemate, Bokue, who'd been standing by Asia, interjected. In theory, it's not impossible. My place is pretty big, and there's a spare room. No. This time, Konako spoke up, stepping over and lightly tapping his calf with her foot. No real force, just a warning. Bokue gave a helpless shrug. I said a spare room, not the same bedroom. Still no. She tapped him again. Why? Now Bokue was the confused one. They were just talking about letting Asia crash for a couple of days, right? Sure, Kurika might have opinions. But if they used separate rooms and Bokue kept her, well, appeased, it should work out, no? Rental apartments in Japan weren't all that complicated. Asia didn't have belongings to move, so once they found a suitable place, she could just go. Easy. So what was the problem? Rias and Akeno paused their silent face-off, both turning to look at Konako. The white-haired girl's gaze flicked away, then she offered a reason no one could refute. Because if you do that, Rias Bokue and Akeno-senpai will be unhappy. Oh. In that case. Both girls exhaled, as though simultaneously releasing tension. Still, that does give me an idea. A hint of inspiration lit Rias's eyes as she turned back to Asia with a smile. Asia-san, earlier you said you'd be fine with anything as long as you can see Bokue every day, right? Why yes. Asia nodded shyly. In that case, how about this? We can help you find a place to stay for free, and you'd get to see Bokue every day. Would you be interested? Truly? That'd be wonderful. No hesitation, Asia agreed on the spot. She didn't care about anything else if it meant being close to Bokue. Catching the excitement in her voice, Rias clapped her hands briskly. Great. Then it's settled. We'll head home. Scene shift. Outside the church, at a small intersection, Asia lingered with an expression of reluctance. She waved multiple times in Bokue's direction. Bokue-san, see you tomorrow. Yes, see you tomorrow. Bokue nodded once, noticing the light had changed from red to green overhead. The girls gradually disappeared into the distance, heading back toward Kua Academy. Bokue took a moment to think, then checked his phone. 35 unread messages from Kurika. He'd only be about half an hour late, but apparently she'd sent a text each minute. That cat girl was something else. No point lingering. Sighing, he slipped his phone away, took a step and vanished at once from the intersection. Back at the Keikain residence. Bokue arrived home later than usual and had to endure a predictable round of face-hugging and clingy cat girl antics the moment he stepped through the door. After washing up, wiping away the traces of saliva left by a certain cat-eared housemaid, he emerged from the bathroom to find that Kurika had already set out dinner on the table in the living room. All right, time to eat. She hummed a little tune, taking her seat by the dinner table and waving Bokue over. Two fluffy cat tails swayed behind her kimono, clearly showing she was in a decent mood. It was hard to believe that only minutes earlier, she'd been snarling and sniffing him for the scent of some unfamiliar woman attempting to bite him in annoyance. But cats are just like that, after they mark their territory, everything is fine again. Sure, it was a bit odd. She insisted on removing her scent from Bokue each morning so that her younger sister wouldn't catch wind of it, and yet come evening, she'd throw a fit if she detected someone else's smell, promptly reapplying her own. Then, the next morning, she'd remove it all over again. Like a strict uniform policy at school where you can only show off your new outfit for a few hours at home, then you're back to the uniform the next day. But Bokue didn't mind. If it made the cat girl happy, that was all that mattered. Hoo. The moment Boke sat down, Kurika slid her way into his lap as if by magic without him lifting a finger. Her cat-like flexibility let her wiggle right onto him. And then casually she grabbed a large hunk of braised beef, holding it in her teeth and offering it to him. No words needed, her intent was obvious, she wanted him to bite it from her mouth, basically sharing the chunk of meat. Boke paused, then gave in. Just as he opened up, Kurika lunged and tore the beef into 2 roughly equal pieces, one for each of them. How is it? Tasty. She licked her lips, satisfied. Boke chewed for a bit. It's okay, I guess most of the juices got sucked away by you, so it's kinda bland now. Shall I get you another piece? Nah, let's just eat dinner properly. What a shame. Even so, she didn't climb off his lap. She remained perched on him, helping herself whenever he lifted a bite of something she wanted. Conversely, she sometimes offered tidbits to him, either by hand or mouth. It made the extra dining chairs seem entirely pointless. Boke ate, half smirking inwardly at their routine. Then Kurika glanced up from his lap. By the way, how did things go with my sister at school today? Huh? Fine, I guess. Boke swallowed his food. Kurika's little sister, of course, was Konako, originally named Chiron. Kurika had told him about that long ago. What do you mean, fine, I guess, she asked, feeding him a mouthful of enoki mushrooms straight from her chopsticks. I told you to keep an eye on Chiron at school, didn't I? Or were you too busy getting it on with those busty women every day? Getting it on. Great. He tapped her lightly on the head with his chopstick handle, giving her a faintly exasperated look. You're imagining things. Besides, Konako's not in the same grade. Wandering into another class all day would look suspicious, like I'm up to no good. She's hardly a kid who needs constant watch to make sure she's eaten lunch. So what? I've already said it's okay if you get together with Chiron, haven't I? You're joking, right? How is that a joke? Kurika genuinely didn't seem to see the problem. After a moment's thought, she let out an "oh" of realization. Oh, you mean that time I said I'd pop up right in the middle if you tried something with Chiron then join in, yeah? Well, that can't be helped. She's still avoiding me, after all. A book I read says sisters are more likely to reconcile if they do certain things together. I'm pretty sure that certain things in your book wasn't about that. Boke resisted the urge to facepalm. Never mind. Let's not talk about this bizarre stuff. You're right. Surprisingly, she gave up the topic readily, just licking her lips in a flirtatious manner. Anyway, after dinner we can bathe. Then he. Midway through her suggestive words, she recalled something else. Say, did that Jujutsu Sorcerer girl from before contact you again? No. Haven't heard from her. Boke set down his chopsticks, pulled out his phone, and glanced at both the forum DMS and his texts. Nothing new. Kurika leaned over to confirm no new messages, then shrugged. Fine, let's keep eating. Then we can get down to a different kind of business. Right as she said that, a news app banner popped up on Boke's phone. Breaking, 5:39 p.m. Today authorities discovered the body of a male victim in a Tokyo Chuo ward home, apparently slaughtered by a cult. Police advise residents to keep doors and windows locked, and report suspicious persons. The rest was the usual police statement. Boke focused on the first half. It matched the place where he'd killed the ex-priest Freed. That poor homeowner must have been found. But why only one body? He'd left Freed's severed head on the table, too, right? Japan's police weren't so incompetent as to miscount the corpses, were they? After 4 days of the usual school grind, it was finally Friday, the day everyone had been looking forward to. Just endure today's classes, and 2 glorious days of weekend would follow. At Kyoa Academy, Fridays typically didn't have many classes. Apart from a few morning lessons, the only thing left in the afternoon was a pair of self-study periods. Of course, calling them self-study was basically a formality. There were no teachers supervising, so go-home club students just fiddled with their phones, waiting out the 2 periods before heading home. Students who did have club activities could get started early, wrapping up sooner and returning home sooner. Early afternoon occult research club, old schoolhouse. As usual, by the time Bokue Keikain arrived, everyone else was already in the first-floor reception room. After all, Rias Gremory, Akeno Heimjima, and Konako typically lived here overnight. Rather than a mere club space, this old building was practically their personal dorm, with just enough area partitioned off as a club room. They rarely had any outside members around. And now, with Asia living here as well, there was yet another occupant. Good afternoon, Asia. Sleep okay last night in the club building? Walking in from outside, Boke greeted the blonde girl, who sat on the couch beside Konako. Good afternoon, Boke-san, and thanks for asking. I slept very well last night. When she heard him speak, Asia tilted her head slightly, her gentle face lighting up with a warm smile. Rias-senpai, Akeno-senpai, and Konako were all so kind. They got me a bed and sheets, and Konako even helped clean the room for me. That's so? Great, Boke trailed off, a slight frown crossing his face. Something felt off about the seating arrangement today. Usually, in the reception area, there were 2 couches facing each other. Boke and Rias would occupy the right couch, while Akeno and Konako took the left. But now, it was switched around. Konako and Asia were sharing the right-hand couch, whereas Akeno and Rias were on the left. What's more, the way Akeno and Rias sat looked downright awkward. Even though they were on the same couch, they kept a sizable gap between them, as if an invisible barrier separated them. They looked like they might have had some sort of disagreement. Plastic sisters, maybe? Boke wondered, scanning the scene with suspicion. Noticing his hesitation, Akeno, who was sitting on the left couch, smiled sweetly, patting the empty seat beside her. What's wrong, Boke? Didn't we say last time that you'd sit over here today? Come on. Right. He tried meeting Rias's eyes. She glanced at him for half a second and then looked away, feigning indifference. Something was definitely off. But with no better option, Boke headed for that couch and sat down. And so it ended up with a lovely girl on each side, Rias Gremory and Akeno Himejima, the top 2 campus beauties at Kyoto. If that got out, their fan clubs might start a riot and come after him with samurai bus hijacking tactics. Though that, in turn, wouldn't really accomplish anything. While Boke mused on these thoughts, the black-haired ponytail girl next to him began moving in closer. Listen, Boke. Akeno's voice was low as she twisted toward him on the couch. Leaning forward, she rested her hands on the cushion. Her otherwise conservative uniform tightened in that pose, creating a deep, eye-popping valley that was very hard to ignore. President here is being so unfair. She said it didn't matter who you sat with, but the moment it was time to follow through she chose to sit here first, hogging the middle seat so you couldn't sit down. Only after you arrived did she move over. JG's, Akeno. Rias, looking flustered, widened her eyes at the mention of her little scheme. That's not it. I just happened to feel like sitting here today. When Boke arrived, I remembered I'd said you could sit by him, so I moved. That's how it went. Is that really so? Ponytailed Akeno gave an elegant little laugh, eyes half-lidded with amusement. If that's all, why not just sit across from us with Asia and Konako? As club president, shouldn't you be paying extra attention to our brand new member? Akeno. Rias snapped, rising from the couch, eyebrows drawn in annoyance as she stared down her friend from a short distance away. What's with you today? If there's something bothering you, say it outright. Why all these roundabout digs? Say it outright, There isn't anything big to fuss over. Just one thing. Akeno kept her sweet, housewife smile and raised her forefinger decisively. You said it was fine last time, so this time doesn't count. Next time, I want Boke all to myself on this couch. Huh? That's it. Rias blurted out reflexively but cut herself off partway, as if realizing something. She stared at Akeno in shock. Wait, you also? No need to finish. Everyone present except Asia understood perfectly. Akeno's expression turned even more triumphant, openly provocative. And if I am? Then what? The room descended into tense silence. After roughly 10 seconds, Rias mumbled. I have nothing to say. That's your choice. I'm not about to comment. Rias flopped back onto the couch, crossing her legs and resting her chin on her hand, gaze averted. Akeno seemed to glow with quiet triumph. Suddenly, Rias clapped her hands softly. Anyway, back on topic. We did want to ask you something, Asia-san. She smiled, sweet but firm. Will you consider becoming a member of the Gremory household? Becoming a member of the Gremory family, as a devil's servant? The question came so abruptly that it completely blindsided the blonde nun. She had zero mental preparation. Sitting on the couch with wide eyes, Asia looked like a startled kitten, blinking in bewilderment. Member? What does that mean? It means becoming part of our family, Akeno answered smoothly. She sidled closer to the boy on her left, sliding herself until their waists practically touched and their shoulders leaned together. Oh, right, there's one more thing we forgot to mention, Asia. The Gremory household are all devils. Whoosh. With those words, to prove her claim, Akeno offered a playful smile and made a small gesture. A moment later, 2 bat-like black wings appeared on her back. One of those wings was in plain view for Asia to see, while the other snaked behind her, draping itself over Keikain Boke's shoulder and pulling her body even closer to him. From the other side of the couch came Rias's mildly annoyed voice. Akeno, your wing is jabbing into my space. Ah, sorry. I was just trying to show Asia, but it sort of. Still smiling, Akeno didn't withdraw. She looped both arms around Boke's, her soft voice dropping. Anyway, let's scoot over a bit. Devil wings might not be a main weapon, but if I accidentally brush someone, it can sting. With that, she pressed her well-endowed figure against Boku's arm, pulling him closer. This move caused the red-haired girl's temple to throb with visible frustration. Meanwhile, on the opposite couch, Asia finally caught up. So that means, Ria-senpai and Akeno-senpai and Konako-chan are all devils. Yes, that's correct. Half her weight resting on Boku's side, Akeno answered with an easy nod. What about Boku-san, then? I'm just human, Boku said. Oh, that's a relief. Asia let out a tiny breath of relief, then realized how that sounded, guilt flickering across her face. What do I mean, that's a relief? That line of thinking was exactly the mindset the church had pounded into her, to loathe devils on principle. In her old congregation, if you didn't spit venom whenever devils came up, your loyalty was questioned. Even she, a steadfast believer, had been exiled as a heretic simply because her power could heal devils, too. Yet here was a human Onmyōji, living in friendly coexistence with pure-blood devils. Is this Japan's exorcism culture being super open-minded, or did the devils already conquer Japan in secret? Asia felt her head spin. Well, if it makes you feel any better, in Onmyōji circles, I'm also considered half a heretic. Boku gave an unconcerned shrug. Sure, mainstream Onmyōji tradition is all about fighting monsters and curses. Even some elders in my family cling to that humans versus demons mindset. But I had some experiences when I was younger, so I base my friendships on a person's heart, not on species or affiliation. Seriously, look at Kyoto's Yasaka Shrine. They have the Eastern High Commander of Japan's Yukai-shi's a nine-tailed fox who literally partners with the official meteorological bureau for weather patterns. You don't see Onmyōji storming the shrine to kill her, do you? They can't just pick easy targets and ignore the ones they fear. At the end of the day, you can't rely solely on which side someone belongs to. That's not how real trust works. Exactly. Seeing Boku wrap up his rant, Rias, now in a slightly better mood, chimed in. And for example, Akeno used to be a shrine maiden, but now she's my queen. Q queen. Asia gawked. So Akeno-senpai is your wife? Not that kind of queen. Rias blurted, waving her hands. I mean queen as in a chess piece. We devils assign roles to our servants using chess. I'm the king. Akeno is my queen. Konako is the rook. Sure, in many devil families, the king is male and their chosen queen is female, and they sometimes marry. But it's not mandatory. My brother and I certainly don't do that. Your brother? Akeno. Rias gestured, letting her friend explain. Akeno took over gently. Surtsuke-sama, the president's older brother. He's one of the four great Mu in the underworld. The four great Mu. Asia's green eyes went wide. Wow. I never knew Rias-senpai's brother was such a major figure. Anyway, Rias pressed, it's like if I were a student's president, Akeno would be my vice president, Konako my captain of the sports club, that kind of thing. In Western chess terms, king, queen, rook, knight, bishop, and so on. So if you joined us, Asia, you'd likely take the bishop role. That way you could see Boku all the time and support him in battles, like healing him if needed. We'd never cast you aside like your old church did. Of course, none of them had ever actually seen Boku injured. Never gonna give you up. From nowhere, Boku hummed that old-school tune under his breath. Next second, Akeno giggled out loud and pressed a finger to his cheek, halting him before he went further. That comedic beat unavoidably cracked the serious mood. Rias couldn't help rolling her eyes, while Konako turned her head, hiding a tiny smirk behind a snack. Asia, unaware of the meme, just blinked in confusion but said nothing. So, if I joined, I could fight with Boku-san? I see. Alright, but I need time to think about it. Of course, Rias said graciously. As the conversation was winding down, Boku suddenly felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. He fished it out, reading a short text from Psycho Busujima. Could we meet after your club activities end? I need to talk to you. Attached was a selfie of her waiting at the school gate. Looks like the Jujutsu Association finally decided on something. It was nearly identical to their previous meeting. When Bokue Keikain received the message and left the school building, he found the same swordswoman quietly waiting by the guard booth near the school gates at dusk, hugging a sword bag with her katana inside, gazing at the sun sinking into the horizon. Sorry to keep you waiting, senpai. No, it's fine. Psycho Busujima gave a slight shake of her head, turning to face the boy who had just arrived. She raised the corners of her mouth into a calm, tranquil smile. Actually, I only got here a short while ago myself. I was thinking Boku-san might not see my message for a while if I didn't send it ahead of time, so you might have made me wait. But you came pretty quickly, rather surprising. Boku-san? A question mark appeared over the boy's head. Didn't you address me as Boku last time, senpai? Usually, the second meeting should be more familiar, but now it felt more formal than the first. Ah, that's... Mentioning this, Psycho, whose sword-like features always seemed serene, briefly showed a hint of awkwardness. Last time, we didn't really know each other, and I had no idea who you were. In fact, my father raised me to treat people politely, and the Jujutsu Association specifically asked that I adopt a more official tone for this matter. Something about it felt off. Boke went quiet for a moment, then scratched his head with a soft click of his tongue. Forget all that. I'm not like those hidebound relics in my clan. If it's me you're talking to, just keep it casual. Hearing overly formal speech makes me uncomfortable. If you don't mind, just call me Boke and skip all the nonsense. Alright. If you insist, then I'll do that. Hearing the boy's suggestion, Psycho relaxed her earlier uptight manner. She nodded toward the west side's intersection off campus. Same plan as last time, let's find somewhere quiet to talk. Sure, let's go. Though not the exact same time, it was the exact same place, 10 minutes later, in a familiar cafe. Psycho once again ordered coffee, while Boke changed up and got orange juice plus a slice of tiramisu. The swordswoman sipped her coffee, cutting straight to the point. About the incident with the Sukuna's finger that Bokun destroyed, I reported it to the Jujutsu Association the same day I returned to the school. This afternoon, they finally gave me a response. They're not gonna make me pay up, right? Boke asked around the straw in his mouth, voice muffled. Of course not, Psycho said, smiling faintly. The association wants Bokun to come in for a face-to-face discussion. Conveniently, next month is the Goodwill event between Tokyo Prefectural Jujutsu High and Kyoto Prefectural Jujutsu High. At that time, Principal Gakugenji from Kyoto, along with exchange students from that side, will be at Tokyo Jujutsu High. Oh, so that's it. Boke got the picture. Even though Psycho didn't spell it out fully, the implication was clear. The Jujutsu Association would send the principals of both sister schools, Kyoto and Tokyo, to talk with him. He saw no problem with that. Kyoto plus Tokyo effectively represented half or more of the Jujutsu world in Japan. It was like how the top two universities were Tokyo University first, and Kyoto University second, overshadowing everything else. It wasn't that Tokyo and Kyoto themselves were inherently special, but that all the best resources and top talents were funneled into those places for historical and political reasons. Resources out of 10, Tokyo got 4, Kyoto 3, Osaka 1.5, the rest scattered. Oh, right. Setting aside his tiramisu spoon, Boke arched an eyebrow. It's a major event with serious stakes, so, the three big clans aren't going to show up in person. That. I'm not sure, Psycho admitted with a hesitant shake of her head. Strictly speaking, if you combined Tokyo, Kyoto Jujutsu High, the two principals could represent half the Jujutsu Association. But fundamentally, the association was still dominated by the big three sorcerer families. Gojo, Kamo, Zenin. Those two principals were basically just window dressing, figureheads like Jim Hacker and yes, Prime Minister. Or maybe even less. At least the British Prime Minister, if determined, could overrule the Cabinet Secretary. But these principals? The three families could easily reforge iron to reassert dominance. Thus the only logical explanation, the three families had decided on a humiliating fallback strategy. Just like in that Yes, Prime Minister episode about redrawing boundaries with the French, Jim Hacker originally intended to handle it personally but ended up letting the Foreign Office do the dishonorable negotiation after Humphrey cornered him. Likewise, the big three clans likely intended to avoid humiliating themselves in front of an Onmyōji, so they'd let the two principals handle the dirty work. On the surface, at least, it looked better. Aware of that subtext, Boke didn't press further. He took another bite of cake, then nodded. Got it. Guess that's settled, then. Then I'll send you the details as soon as I can confirm the meeting time, Psycho said, nodding contentedly. Meanwhile, at a different cafe far from the student district in Tokyo, in a discreet corner booth. So you say the intelligence about that cursed womb is confirmed now? At worst there should be 8 or 9 left. 8 or 9, that's enough, so it's decided. At next month's Goodwill event, I'll handle killing Gojo Satoru. None of you get involved. Once it's done, you hand over Prison Realm to me. I want it for my collection. Of course, provided you can actually pull it off. As evening approached 7 o'clock, the girls, having just finished dinner at the Kua Academy cafeteria, strolled back to the old school building. Ah, another busy day, Ria said with a small sigh. By the way, Asia, did you get enough to eat just now? Thank you for asking, I'm quite full, the blonde nun replied, her gentle smile as demure as ever, following close behind Rias and Akeno. She really had eaten a lot this evening, enough for a feast by her own standard. In her past life at the church, dinners were plain unless it was Christmas or some special occasion. Fish or meat was seen as sinful indulgence. But for her, a bowl of shashi ramen plus a side of tempura was a rare and marvelous treat. Still. I thought you might be upset, Ria-san, she added softly, her expression turning shy. Upset? Why would I be? Rias paused at the foot of the stairs, glancing back with surprise. Asia immediately shook her head. I didn't mean it like that, it's just, you did so much for me finding me a place to stay, arranging my enrollment and I feel like I'm imposing too much. Don't worry about it. We said we'd give you time to think it over, no way we'd go back on our word, Rias said with a gentle shrug. When I was younger, I used to think the more servants I had, the better. But the more I saw, the more I realized that turning someone into your servant is just forcibly changing their race into a devil. If someone's going to betray you, they'll do it whether they're a servant or not. And if someone's never going to betray you, they'll stand by you in a crisis, even with no contract at all. As she spoke, a soft, almost wistful expression flickered across her face. Until Asia quite innocently blurted out the next line. Like Boke-san, right? Wah. Be Boke? Why bring him up out of nowhere? That's completely unrelated. Pink tinged Rias's cheeks as she sputtered in fluster. Ahem, anyway, that's just the way it is. And though your sacred gear is special, it's not like we'd forcibly take it from you. She coughed once, regaining composure. We Gremory devils aren't that unreasonable. Speaking of sacred gears, Asia murmured, pressing her index finger to her lips, Boke-san doesn't have one, right? Rias tilted her head. Huh? He did mention once that he has a gear, but he's not fond of using it. I guess we've never actually seen him pull it out. She paused, then remembered something. Oh, almost forgot the important news, the school just sent me the notice your enrollment is approved. You'll be in the same class as Boke, so once you officially start. Really? That's wonderful. Asia's face lit up at the prospect of sharing classes with Boke. She raised her fists in a small cheer. That means from now on, I can see Boke-san not only after class, but at lunch too. That's so great. Unfortunately, not tomorrow, Rias cut in. Why not? Because tomorrow and the day after that are the weekend. No classes. You'll have to wait for Monday to see him. Asia deflated in disappointment. With that, Rias tossed them a casual remark as she headed up the stairs. Alright, that's it for now. I'm going to my room. Akeno, Konako, Asia, if you want the bath first, go ahead. Scene shift, Rias's bedroom. Phew, done. Rias sat at her desk by the window, capping her pen after writing the final line in her notebook. She stretched both arms high above her head, arching her back. She'd just finished today's journal entry. Scanning over the pages, each day's record was brief, so a single page often covered multiple dates. April 25th, Boke said he picked up something amazing on yesterday's mission. Turned out to be just a severed finger. It looked super gross, apparently some super important cursed item from the Jujutsu Association. We were in the middle of our club meeting when someone came to drag him off. Wonder how that turned out. Sheesh, can't you stop picking up weird random stuff? April 26th, Boke, why does the craziest stuff keep happening to him? This morning, he ran into a nun while leaving his house and after school, got into a fight with fallen angels, dragging us to a church to rescue that same nun. So basically, he's got a tracking device on that poor girl or something. Though I have to say, him charging in to save me if I'm ever in danger was kind of cool. April 27th, Akeno's acting strange these past 2 days. She's suddenly picking a fight over who sits next to Boke, even saying she likes him. Meanwhile, Boke is just letting her lean on him in front of everyone. Weren't those two never that close before? Day after day, different names came and went in her diary, but one name always remained. And the more Rias read, the more it sounded like the daily ramblings of a girl in love. Feeling her cheeks warm, she gave a small humph, pressing the backs of her cooler hands to her face in an attempt to calm down. At that moment, a runic formation appeared on the floor behind her, glowing red with a gentle magical hum. Hi! Noticing that energy swirl, Rias quickly snapped her journal shut and spun in her chair. A mature-looking maid figure came into focus inside the scarlet teleportation circle, a woman wearing a uniform reminiscent of a certain perfect and elegant head maid. Rias blinked, murmuring in surprise. Grafia. Oni-sama. Good evening, Lady Rias.